Disney and the ABC network are taking Jimmy Kimmel Live off the air indefinitely. This follows a controversy over comments the late-night comedian made Monday night about Charlie Kirk's suspected killer and the MAGA movement.
Some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
After some insensitive remarks about Charlie Kirk, Jimmy Kimmel has his show pulled from the air. People are celebrating. I'm happy. I'll share with you what happened. But here's the question. Was it right? I'll also give you my opinion on that. And it's probably not what you'd expect. Welcome back to the JP Reacts channel, my freedom-loving friend. This is where we help spread the light of truth and freedom because truth conquers. So it's almost like it's Christmas for so many of us freedom lovers. A propagandist has been taken off the air, disguised as a comedian, and hasn't done comedy for so many years. He was a COVID propagandist. He's been a leftist propagandist. And now he's taken off the air for saying insensitive is, putting it lightly, just extremely bad moral character remarks about Charlie Kirk. And we'll show you exactly what Jimmy Kimmel says, show you what some people around the internet are saying. There's various opinions, leftists melting down, conservatives celebrating. And as I mentioned, there's an overarching question. Was this right? I'll show you something really important that might have you thinking, maybe it wasn't right, even though I'm happy about it. But starting with, here's the headline. ABC pulls Jimmy Kimmel live indefinitely after offensive Charlie Kirk comments. Here's a high level of what you need to know before we get into the footage of what Kimmel actually said. Jimmy Kimmel Live will be preempted indefinitely, an ABC spokesperson confirmed. I had to look up what's preempted mean, and basically means it will be replaced indefinitely. There has not been official word Jimmy Kimmel is fired. His show is canceled. This is the exact language. Jimmy Kimmel's show is preempted indefinitely, which leaves open, like, there could be a route where he comes back. But for now, what we do know is Jimmy Kimmel is off the air. By the way, he's not happy about it. And final thing, and by the way, this will be more relevant even later. We're going to have some dots connected. The FCC chairman said a public apology from Kimmel would be a very reasonable, minimal step for the comedian, ABC, and parent company Disney to take. There are calls for Kimmel to be fired, the FCC chairman Carr went on. I think, you could certainly see a path forward for a suspension over this. And again, the FCC is going to have remedies that we could look at. This is a very, very serious issue right now for Disney. Now, here's something to keep in mind. The FCC chairman Carr, my understanding is he was appointed by President Trump. Just keep that back of your mind. Now, so many of us are happy that Jimmy Kimmel is off the air because I think he was a deceiver. Was he a comedian? Yeah, he was. He hasn't been for a long time.
It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for our climate, for science, for journalism, for justice, for free speech. It was a terrible night for poor people, for the middle class, for seniors who rely on Social Security, for our allies in Ukraine, for NATO, for the truth.
He was a propagandist, not doing comedy, not adding entertainment value, but I think his principal modus operandi was he's a propagandist. And just like I'm happy to see toxins taken out of our food supply, I'm happy to see toxins taken out of our psychological supply. And I think best case scenario, his firing, not really, but his not being on air indefinitely has to do with this. Getting fired for celebrating murder is not cancel culture. It's your employer deciding they don't want a disgusting and potentially homicidal person working for them. People get fired for less all the time. Now, I've been saying on all my videos lately, it's important to distinguish between cancel culture, which is, we don't like what you said, we're going to silence you, we're going to cancel you, versus if you're displaying objectively really poor moral character, That's a great reason for an employer to fire you. Really bad reason is the cancerous cancel culture where you get an employer to fire someone because they said something you don't like. It threatens your perspective. And that could actually be coming from impeccable moral character, where someone's saying what they truly think. Name the topic, maybe COVID, maybe Pfizer shots, etc. But this, it would be my hope that ABC let Jimmy Kimmel go because he was in fact expressing really bad moral character. Before we get to the footage of what Jimmy Kimmel actually said, here's what Piers Morgan has to say. Jimmy Kimmel lied about Charlie Kirk's assassin being MAGA. You'll see that. This caused understandable outrage all over America, prompted TV station owners to say they wouldn't air him, and now he's been suspended by his employers. Why is he being heralded as some kind of free speech martyr? It's a great question. Now let's take a look at what Jimmy Kimmel actually said. In this video that walks us through this is from the New York Post on their article covering the topic.
We had some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points.
Now, real quick, something to say on that. That's the lie Piers Morgan was talking about. Jimmy Kimmel, here he is exercising free speech. Is this hate speech? Doesn't matter. It's free speech. Now, that might matter to an employer because hate speech is bad moral character. Idiot speech, insensitive, it's bad moral character. Jimmy Kimmel's just doing free speech. Nothing wrong through the lens of the First Amendment. I will stand by that. And he's outright lying. Let's not be surprised by that. He's a propagandist. When has he ever told the truth about anything? I'm sure he has. It's not 100% of the time. So the lie here is he's very directly implying, yeah, Charlie Kirk's assassin, he's MAGA. And the MAGA people are trying to pretend like he's not one of their own. That is objectively incorrect. You can listen to the Utah district attorney talking about how the shooter, he was leftist. His parents were concerned about that. And by the way, the shooter had a trans boyfriend. Not exactly a characteristic of the MAGA base.
This kid who murdered Charlie Kirk is anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points. There was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. Demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish.
Now, obviously, you can call that, it's insensitive, it's mean, probably not even hate speech. It's making Jimmy Kimmel look bad. President Trump and Charlie Kirk were really close. And obviously, he's cherry picking this one piece of President Trump where he quickly changed his subject when he was asked about Charlie Kirk and his assassination. So it's meant to frame President Trump to look like, yeah, he didn't care. And it is a gross distortion of that reality. Let's move on.
They've wanted a ballroom at the White House, right? They don't have a ballroom. They have to use tents on the lawn for President Xi when he comes over. If it rains, it's a wipeout. And so I was with the architects that would design. It's going to be incredible. And they came in, they said, Charlie Kirk is dead. I didn't know what they meant. I said, he was dead. Charlie Kirk was shot. And they thought he was dead because it was so horrific, you know. And I said, dead.
And then we installed the most beautiful chandelier. Sconces, you wouldn't believe. There's something wrong with them. There really is. I mean.
So factually, with no interpretation other than the narrative I added, but that's factually what Jimmy Kimmel said, the reason why his show has been replaced. We'll get back to the video, but first, unless you're already independently wealthy and never have to work another day in your life, let me tell you about a game changer that I'm using personally I Trust Capital. I Trust Capital is redefining access to digital assets with retirement and long-term wealth building solutions. That's great, but here's the deal. I care about my future in retirement, so I've had an IRA account with a traditional bank without very impressive growth, being honest. It's safe and secure, but it's never really excited me because you have a little interest working for you that's based on the value of the dollar. But inflation obviously works against that, and storing your value in US dollars is like holding an ice cube and watching it melt. Now, I've been a long-term believer in Bitcoin because it's inflation-proof, and I only see the value of it going up long-term. So when I learned that I Trust Capital offers fully compliant crypto IRA accounts, I said, I didn't know you could do that. And they said, yeah, you can. That's why we're here. And I said, you mean to tell me I can hold Bitcoin in my IRA account instead of US dollars? And they said, yes, along with 80 other cryptocurrencies and precious metals. I immediately transferred my existing IRA at my bank into my newly formed I Trust Capital IRA. And their US-based customer service was extremely helpful and made it easy because they're fully informed people who care. But I got even more excited. Here's why. Typically, when you're trading crypto, every single gain is a taxable event, but not when it's in your I Trust Capital IRA. For example, maybe you're like me and you're a believer in the long-term potential of Bitcoin. So when Bitcoin hits, say, 125,000, within my account, I can sell some or all of my Bitcoin, convert that to US dollars, stays within my account, no taxes paid, and then I can use those dollars to buy back in at Bitcoin when it drops to, say, 90,000. Instead of a massive chunk being paid in taxes, that chunk stays in your account, working for you as an investment, giving you a beautiful compounding effect. I Trust Capital also offers premium custody accounts for non-retirement crypto trading with institutional level security. And that protects you from hacks, scams, and thefts that plague regular crypto exchanges. I took immediate action setting up my IRA with I Trust Capital because it makes sense to me. Maybe it does to you too. Check it out. Head to itrustcapital.com/JPSears and use promo code JPS8 for a $100 funding bonus. Now back to the video. And of course, the left is melting down as the right cheers. And you see the being depicted pretty accurately here. And I'm guessing people on the left melting down, it's not because they're standing on a principle. It's because it's one of their own that was taken off air finally. On that, here's what Nick Sorter posts on Twitter. Leftists are melting down over Disney/ABC pulling Jimmy Kimmel, saying it's a violation of free speech. But they were radio silent when Disney fired Gina Carano for speaking out against COVID mandates. They can all shut the hell up. And here's leftist activist Harry Sisson, what he posted just recently on the topic. We are witnessing the most brazen attack on free speech in modern American history. Elon, Trump, and MAGA said they were free speech warriors. It's the exact opposite. And then this Twitter account, which I really enjoy, pointing to it right here, not saying it out loud. You know what I mean? This is what Harry Sisson had previously posted. Happy 1-year anniversary of Donald Trump being banned from Twitter, which is obviously a really huge potential red flag on free speech. So that just shows this particular individual isn't standing on principle. His outrage isn't that a principle is being violated, or else he would have been outraged when President Trump was silenced. Now, without question, I'm happy about this, seeing Jimmy Kimmel, the toxin of his propaganda, cleansed out of the availability of our broadcasting airways on a major platform. I'm happy about that. Not gonna lie, I'm happy about that. But remember the question I posed. Is it right? I have a big question mark on that. Here's how it would be right. If ABC made the authentic decision on their own accord to replace Jimmy Kimmel because they say that's bad moral character, it reflects poorly on us as a company, so we will exercise our free will of firing him. He had every right to say what he had to say. And we have every right to fire someone based on what they say. That's just, You got free speech. There's consequences of free speech. That would be the scenario where I say, okay, this was right. However, I'm not convinced that that scenario is what's taking place. Now, I'll show you this from the Rolling Stone. Full disclaimer, it's a propaganda outlet. So we're going to take this with a grain of salt, but we'll get to some truth here in a second. In the hours leading up to the decision to pull Jimmy Kimmel, two sources familiar with the matter, senior executives at ABC, its owner Disney, and affiliates, convened emergency meetings to figure out how to minimize the damage. Multiple execs felt that Kimmel had not actually said anything over the line, the two sources say, but the threat of Trump administration retaliation loomed. The threat of Trump administration retaliation loomed. If that was the motivating factor for ABC to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel, then I would say it's not right that they let Jimmy Kimmel go, even though I'm happy about it. That's what I want. I want to stand on principle and say, if that's the scenario, that is not right. Because going back to the article we looked at earlier, remember this guy, FCC chairman, who was commenting on the issue that's apparently a President Trump appointee. So even though Rolling Stone is a propaganda outlet, I don't trust everything they say, or I don't trust anything they say. If what they say is true, okay, they actually felt pressure from the Trump administration, felt like they were a threat. It makes sense the Trump appointee, the FCC chairman, he could have been the Trump person to make ABC's life hell because Jimmy Kimmel said something that President Trump doesn't like. He said a terrible thing that President Trump didn't like. He said a terrible thing that you and I don't like. You and I probably find absolutely despicable. So that's a theoretical route to consider on how it actually could be plausible that that's the reason why ABC let Jimmy Kimmel go. And if that is the reason, I think that's absolutely wrong. I think that absolutely threatens our freedom of speech. Because remember, the federal government does not have any right to infringe on our speech. Remember how the Biden administration was telling Facebook, you censor these people? Look, it's Facebook censoring these people. No, it was Facebook taking direction from the federal government to censor people, which means it's the federal government censoring people, absolutely violating your and I's freedom of speech. That's what the Biden administration was doing. If this is the Trump administration essentially putting pressure on ABC to silence an American citizen, granted, he's not our best and brightest, but to silence an American citizen because he said something the Trump administration and quite honestly the MAGA base doesn't like, that is as guilty of a violation of freedom of speech as the Biden administration was guilty in instructing Facebook and old Twitter to censor people. Now, I don't know if that's true. All I know is we don't know for sure. I want to stay principled and say people have every right to say really crappy things. What you don't have a right to say is threatening violence, threatening death. That's in the First Amendment. Check it out. It's in the Constitution. But we have to stand on principle and support the other side's right to say terrible things. We don't have to like it. We don't have to amplify it. We have to support that right, or else we do not support freedom of speech. And in this moment, I am very worried about not President Trump himself, but people in the Trump administration wanting to take away people's First Amendment rights. Well, JP, how can that be? Are you turning into a leftist? No, I've been a patriot and I'm turning into more of a patriot. So the reason why this whole Jimmy Kimmel situation, and maybe did ABC fire him because they felt pressure from the Trump administration, they felt there might have been threats and stuff coming down the line. The reason why I consider that could be true, and if it is true, it's very dangerous, is just the other day, Pam Bondi declared a fight, her fight against free speech. Check this out.
There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people, so we show them that some action is better than no action.
We will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
Well, Pam, you sound like a leftist tyrant, and I don't like it. You could definitely say what Jimmy Kimmel said about Charlie Kirk and the implications with President Trump and all the MAGA base. You could say, yeah, that was hate speech. And Pam Bondi, taking her words, especially you said that about Charlie, her words would be, well, there's no place for that in America. The fact is, she is incredibly incorrect. There is absolutely a place in America for hate speech. You don't have to like it, but it's called free speech. You do not have free speech if you eliminate hate speech. You have tyrannical censorship. So given this Jimmy Kimmel situation has just come to light right after Pam Bondi said those words you just heard. And Pam Bondi, she was not drawing a distinction between free speech and threatening violence or death. No. She was saying free speech and hate speech. There's no place for hate speech in America, especially after what happened to Charlie. That is someone with an agenda out to censor. I can't believe she said that, but she said that. And I have to believe she meant what she said, or else she wouldn't have said that. That's why I sit here and say, I would love to just be celebrating with everybody on the right. Jimmy Kimmel is off the air. Good riddance. He wasn't worth the money. He's an idiot. He said things I don't like. But I'm just glad ABC finally came to their senses and fired a guy who's just really pretty much human trash. I'd love to sit here and celebrate. And honestly, I'm happy he's gone. And that's just like my own selfish, ooh, we got our way. That's good. He's a guy I don't like. But standing on principle, I look at that and I heavily question, was that right? Well, we don't currently have the definitive answer. Why did ABC fire him? Was it because they said he has bad moral character, so as their employer, we have a right to fire him? Or was it, hey, we felt pressure from people like Pam Bondi who just said, no, there's no place for free speech in America, especially after what happened to Charlie. Is that why they fired him? If they did, that, even though it appears as though that makes us happy, that is the exact same thing the Biden administration was doing, absolutely treating the First Amendment like it's toilet paper. So even though it's not clear on exactly why ABC fired him, I have to suspend my celebration of Jimmy Kimmel's being suspended indefinitely and just say the more important question is, what's the principle? Is this violating free speech, or was this ABC, the employer, exercising their free will to fire them of their own accord without pressure from the federal government? That's the question I'm sitting in. We don't know the answer, but those are the facts as I know it. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments section, and I'll look forward to seeing you on our next video. But until then, stay free.